Hey, 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 it's your host, Jasmine Haley, for the Legacy Speaker Show, and today's guest is Bethany Hawkins. Bethany is the CEO and founder of Crackers and Soup. Being a Black woman who's worked in corporate for over 18 years, y'all, she knows what it's like to not be heard. So she decided to create a company that allows you to do the same, to actually get to a place of doing exactly what I'm doing right now, sharing our voice. She ensures all historically underrepresented voices are heard. Crackers and Soup has worked on over 70 podcasts. So she knows what she's doing, y'all, from creating cover art to helping women create their podcast vision through launches. She has worked on podcasts that are award nominated. She has won awards. Okay. Okay. Podcasts that have 3 million listeners, and one podcast she worked on was featured in a Princeton course. Believing that sharing knowledge is the only way to help us create generational wealth, Bethany is now sharing what she has learned in her decades of business experience and her podcasting knowledge in a new mentorship and coaching program for podcast hosts and podcast business owners. And let me tell you, y'all, when I was just transitioning into a new industry, Bethany provided such a level of excellence I had never seen before. It was just amazing. And I was new in the industry. I was trying to figure myself out. I wasn't ready for her actual services at that time, but when she came to me and she met with me with such excellence and grace, I have never forgotten it. She provided actual audiograms for me that were not asked for, right? She actually showed like, here's what I can do, right? But really came from a spirit of giving. So I just want to say that I knew at some point in time we would collaborate, and here's our first one. And I'm just so thankful to have you on the show.
Ma'am, it is too early for me to get reclamped. I wasn't ready.
I'll never forget it.
Bust out with the sweetness. Like we're from the Northeast. Like you have to get grimy and then you get complimentary at the end and be like, I love you. We don't know how to do niceties first. That's not who we are.
I know, but I can't help it. I'll never forget what that onboarding experience was like, to just be in a discovery call, like to just like really be figuring out what's the next step. And I was still figuring things out for myself. So I just wanted to thank you for that. I don't think I've ever formally thanked you. And just to let y'all know that if and when you decide to contact Bethany, you won't regret it. You really won't. You'll be well taken care of. Well
Thank you.
taken care of.
It's because people who come to my discovery calls and know they're genius, but they're just not sure how to share that. That is what I see.
Yeah.
So it's just, I see just what a reflection of you already are. I just hope to articulate how you can shape that into what you want it to be.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
it's just a reflection of you, boo. That's it.
Thank you.
My
Thank
greatness
you.
is a reflection of your greatness.
Oh, I love that. And I did about 50, 11 pivots after that interaction with Bethany. But we'll talk about that
Here
another
we
time.
are. Here we are today. And that's all that matters is today. What are we doing today?
Exactly. So I had to get you on here because one of the things I know is that, I'm a creative person. I'm always going to be creating something, but I have noticed that having structure is the only way to get the type of growth that you desire. So whether it be a signature speaking program or an offer that you're creating, or, a podcast that you want to have, you need to have some structure centered around it so that you can really amplify your voice. And so I really, that's going to be the theme of our discussion today, but I would love to know, like, why podcast for you as the form or medium for visibility with our voices?
I love that question. When I was in the corporate world, I knew that I needed to bust out like I was wearing size 8 jeans because I am not a size 8 in any way. So I needed to bust out of there. Like I needed to bust out of those jeans. I just didn't know how that looked or what that felt like. And I come from Black parents who were like, you're going to go to college and you're going to get a quote unquote good job that has benefits and you're going to get a pension and you're going to retire from there, because that's what they did, because they came from a financial insecurity background, both of them. And that is what they were told, that if they had structure in their life, if they stayed at the same place for a long period of time, there would be a benefit of monies at the end, right? So when I was wrestling with what to do, because my mental health was taking a nosedive from just being in that experience. I had been in criminal justice for so long. I mean, I paid off my student loans, so I feel like I did my degree diligence by working and striving in that criminal justice field. And I was introduced to podcasts by one of my coworkers and friends. And she said, she knew that I love LeVar Burton. I love him so much. I consider him my uncle. I just figure that he owes me a whole bunch of birthday presents because he's missed all 44 of them. And I just need him to just, come to dinner with me once and I will totally say, it's okay, LeVar, that you missed, Uncle LeVar, that you missed all my birthdays. So she said he has a podcast called LeVar Burton Reads. And I was like, ma'am, I don't know what a podcast is. Like, what do you speak of? And she was like, let me see your phone. So she grabs my Samsung because I'm a droider, all day droider.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah,
you could have left that out.
I scream it from the rooftops.
Apple all day.
You're right. Apple is going to take down the world. I'm convinced iRobots was from Apple. So she picked out my Samsung and she gets me on an app that has podcasts. And she's like, here, just listen. I binged that podcast like it was my job. People thought that I was doing a transcription. I was listening to podcasts. I've been doing payroll. I've been listening to this podcast. And then I started listening to other podcasts. And a lot of the podcasts that I ventured to, which is kind of serendipitous, were podcasts of women that looked like me, women that sounded like me, who too was in the corporate atmosphere. And then they created their own business. They created an entrepreneurship. And I'm like, what is this E word you speak of? What does this look like?
Yeah.
And I was so ecstatic because they gave me, just through my ear canal, the information that I needed and kind of the bravery that I needed, that I didn't know that I needed, but I needed it to look into creating my own business. So as kind of a thank you to all of the internet strangers and podcast strangers who led me into the business that I have now, I knew that I wanted to curtail my business entity around podcasts, because I was like, if there's somebody like me sitting in that cubicle, hoping, wishing, wondering, howing, they are going to get out of the position in which they are in and be successful. I wanted to be the behind the scenes person to create that information for them. Yeah. And that's kind of how it went. So I gave my resignation letter to the district attorney. She really was upset because we worked very well together. It was no knock on her leadership. And I said, at the time, I didn't even know the vernacular for podcasting. And I said, I'm going to be a podcasting virtual assistant. And she was like, Bethany, I have no idea what that means. And I was like, you will. You will. And
I love that.
Yeah. 4 years later, here we are.
Wow. That's incredible. So, this isn't my first podcast. This is my fourth one. I had two in healthcare, and when I met you, I was working on one because I was rebranding, and now here we are with Legacy Speaker Show. And I don't plan on changing it anytime soon. But if I do, it's okay. I would love to know, because one of the things I need people to understand is, when I speak about speaking is more than getting on a stage. Speaking is doing what we're doing right now, right? It's being on a podcast. It is being on virtual rooms. It's being in-person areas. It's in on-demand classes that you may decide to license out. Like, these are all forms of speaking, and it's all forms of training. So I am curious to know, from your expertise and the people that you've worked with, what's the misconception for most people when it comes to podcasting, and why they may not be leveraging it? Because I think there's ways that we can leverage it successfully, but there's something that's preventing us from even into, actually entering that realm.
The backbone of podcasting, by its very definition, is connection and conversation. That's what podcasting is. And I feel that a lot of people get hung up on all of the tactical things. Like, what microphone should I be using? What, how should I, excuse me, how should I be sharing this content in a way that's going to give me 8 billion downloads and 500 sponsors? Instead of really concentrating on what's the connection piece. And it doesn't even have to be a one-on-one interview. It could be so many different aspects. It could be a panel discussion. It could be a solo episode. Because in your solo episodes, you're still connecting with your audience. You're still sharing. You're still giving. You're still providing your genius. In a panel discussion, giving everybody an opportunity to speak on that particular topic. And understanding that that is the root of your podcast and not all of these other extraneous things, because you will get better as you continue with the process of podcasting. And then you can introduce the things to better your audio. You learn little tricks of the trade to make it sound more richer than, maybe the room in which you're in. Plug in headphones is one of them. Having a mic plugged into your computer is another. And making sure that you're always remembering the connection piece is really what's important. And you can, if you kind of get lost in that, you can reach out to your audience for guidance and ask them, what resonated with you? What did you connect with? What do you want me to expand on? So that is also, I know the topic is structure, but it's a great way to integrate that topic into the conversation. Because if you have a list of episodes episode topics that you want to discuss, make sure that you are also taking time in each and every episode to talk to your audience, and not talk to them in a plural, but talk to them in a singular way, because there's only one person listening to your podcast. That listener is important. So listener, you are important. I want to let you know you are important. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to these gems. Let us know what resonated with you. And let us know what you think. Bethany's crazy. She don't know what she's talking about. We want to hear it all. Let's connect on that way.
Yeah, I love that so much. And here's the thing, like, you need to plan, you need to have some structure, you need to have some sort of direction of where you're going. But the foundation of that, like you said, is the conversation and the connection, right? And to me, I'm always focused in on the transformation. Like, what knowledge am I going to share? What gems could I share? Who can I introduce my audience to that could be an asset to them as they're moving along their journey? And have that as the basis, the fundamental core and basis of everything that I do, so that it's meaningful. Because otherwise we're wasting time. And when I started my podcast, and I started doing some video, my lighting was terrible. Absolutely. This is not even the best lighting I have right now because I'm in my office, but my lighting was horrible. I didn't have a mic. I was using the computer, right? I wasn't doing anything like over the top, but yet I was still sharing my message. So I love that you brought that out, and really realistically show that this is a progressive journey. You have to take the first step, and as things move along, you'll make the adjustments necessary.
And here's the beautiful thing about podcasting. As you mentioned earlier, this is your 4th podcast. There comes a time, or there could come a time, when your podcast doesn't resonate with your message any longer. The beautiful thing is you can retire that podcast. You are not sentenced to a podcast. If it is no
Facts.
longer aligned with your message, where you're moving, where you're transitioning to, and either your field or your business or your company or your life, you can put that podcast on retirement. You can just pay her a lower fee in whatever podcast hosting station you are in. So people have access to it. So people are still learning. So people are still gathering those nuggets. And you can transition over to a different podcast, or you can just stop the podcasting altogether. So really being in tune with where you're going and where you foresee, that's what's so important. Because don't do podcasting just to do it, because you're going to get burned out. There's a lot of work to it.
Yes.
Even when you have somebody like my company to assist you, you still got to do something. We can't do it all for you.
Exactly. Absolutely. And it's a lot. It can be a lot of work. And when I first started, I was doing all of the editing. I was doing all the graphics. I was doing I would spend entire Saturdays editing a whole bunch of episodes. That is not easy work to do. Could I have simplified it? Absolutely. Could I have invested to have someone do it for me? Absolutely. I could have been using my time more wisely. So a lot of times we feel like, do I have to have all the bells and whistles? Not necessarily, but do you need to get some assistance and help with it at some point in time? Absolutely.
And if you don't have the means at that time to pay for assistance, there are so many different inexpensive ways in which you can receive help. A Fiverr, people talk about that quite often. You can also go to any community college that has journalism or audio engineering and ask, hey, is there an internship program? Can I get some interns to assist me and help me? You can go to somebody who does graphic design, who's like a high schooler in graphic design in a trade school, and say, hey, let's link up with this professor. Can they assist me in my podcast? So just so they have an understanding of how a business works and how graphics work. So there are inexpensive options. Also, if you don't want to do any of that route and you're like, I want the whole kit and caboodle experience of working on my podcast, structure is really important, because you're going to want to have definitive days in which you record. You're going to want to have definitive days in which you edit. You're going to want to have definitive days in which you do show notes, in which you do graphics, in which you do marketing. You can't do all of those things in the same day. You will go bat guano crazy, and you will pod fade. You won't do it anymore. You're going to be like flipping tables like you're in the Real Housewives of ... And we don't want that for you.
Facts. Okay. It could be exhausting. And so for some of y'all listening, one of the things I needed to do for the season of life that I'm in is I only record four times out of the year. And so I actually batch record all of my episodes with guests. And then I'll have another day where I'm actually, solo things that will come about. But that helped me be able to see, okay, this is what feels good energetically. So like, pay attention to that. Like the structure that works for Bethany or for her podcast and the structure that works for me and my podcast may not be what works for you. For me, I need to batch mine. Whereas you have others who have ones that they have to, because it's based on current events, they literally have to record once a week.
Right. Absolutely. And I love what you said about energetically. Even the date and time in which you are recording. If you are a morning person and you get more of your energy in the morning, record with your guests in the morning. If you are a person who you believe that you are an empath and you generate energy from others, don't schedule 3 recordings back to back, because that first person is going to get all of you. And that third person is just going to get the lackadaisical, I could care less. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still talking you. And you don't want that. You want to give each of your guests the same energy. So just being aware of who you are and when you are at your best, that's when you should be recording. And if that's at 11 o'clock at night, talk to some people, be like, can you stay up until 11 o'clock at night? Some people are like, yes, I am a night owl. They'll be like, bet, we're recording in the dark. That could be your whole podcast, recording in the dark.
Listen, I've had somebody record it in the closet. Okay, we gotta do what we gotta do to
Keep it in the
hide from their
closet.
toddler.
Have a whole song about it being in the closet.
But it's true. It's so true. It's so true. And like, not everybody, because when I batch record, it's like 6 to 7 in a day.
Yeah.
And so I'm used to speaking for full day or half day workshops. So I've learned to exercise my muscle for extended periods of time, but I'm not going to do that every single day.
Right.
And if you haven't really exercised that muscle, don't do that. Like, really take your time and really think about like what really works best for me.
And it sounds so asinine, but I even have to look at my menstrual calendar.
Mm,
Because before I get my period a week before, I am a hot mess express. I can't do anything. So if
mm-hmm,
I am scheduled to do something a week before, forget it. I'm just going to be like,
mm-hmm.
you're going to interview me when I'm on my couch. It's who I am.
Yes, exactly. And there's also times where I feel like structurally you may be in a season in your business in your life where you need to be on a couch.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about the podcast, right?
Mhm.
Right now I'm doing video as well, but there are times where it's like maybe the only thing I've had was I remember I at one time I attached like a mic to my phone and I recorded my podcast in my car during carpool while I was waiting for my
Wow.
kids. So like again, remember y'all, when it comes to structure, we're really encouraging you to figure out like what's in alignment with where you are in your season of life, but also recognize when it's the time to ask for assistance.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, y'all. And listen, I can talk forever to Bethany. But we keep our episodes short and sweet. As short as we can. As short as we can. So my last question to you, Bethany, is what was the best advice that you've ever received for your business? It could be related to podcasting or just business in general.
I think that the best advice that I ever received actually came from myself. And I realized that my transferable skills is what is going to set the groundwork for everything that I do, not only in podcasting, but in my business. So, all
Mm,
of those things that I've learned, all of those things that I have been exposed to, and not only just working, but just in life,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
being organized, being able to engage in conversation, being able to speak on different topics, all of those things I just incorporated into my business. And I was like, I'm going to be me. And
mm-hmm.
I am, this is who I am in a podcast interview or in a business conversation or in a session that I'm doing or in a workshop. Like it is, I is who I is. So,
And we love it.
and some people love it. And some people are like, oh, she's too muchness. But that is the best. That is what truly has carried me when there have been hard times in my business and when there's been
Yeah,
celebratory times in my business is
yeah.
knowing my transferable skills can get me through and knowing who I am. Even
Yeah.
when I don't think I do, I always know who I am.
Mm. And y'all, when you know who you are, you stay in alignment
Yes.
and you can
And people
flourish.
gravitate towards you that you need. I have the dopest people in my community
Yes.
and I'm like, how did I get so blessed?
Yes.
That are doing
Yes.
amazing
Yes.
things, like
Yes.
mind-blowing things. And I'm like, I know them. I
Ooh.
have them on my phone. Like Anna
Right.
Deshawn, she is, I know you're wrapping up very quickly. She's phenomenal. She has this app called the Cube app. And she is part of the LGBTQ community. And she is just this beautiful, vivacious woman who is so smart and talks about crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. And she was up for a Webby Awards and she won Webby Awards. For those who don't know, in podcasting, Webby Awards is like the Oscars. And
Yeah.
she's won. And I'm sending her text messages and I'm like congratulating her. And I'm like, the fact that I even have you in my phone and I can text you,
Mm-hmm.
Ma'am. I'm like, that is a whole flex. I am dropping your name.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. And here's we've gotten into business to create impact, but also to have joy. And like when you're in alignment, when you're clear about who you are, you can create more of that culture. Like a lot of us we left business to escape the culture that we were in. So why not like make sure that we're not burnt out? Like you mentioned, podcast faded. Like you're not fading yourself out because you're not really tapping into the most important thing, which is what are your strengths? What is most aligned with you? How do you want to show up in the world?
Yes.
And then are you doing it and doing it with happiness? Like, are you truly joyful
Yes.
in it? If you're not, then it's time to pivot and change
Ooh,
if
I
you
think
need
that's
it.
a question for the episode.
I know.
Let Jasmine know in the reviews after you listen to this episode, were you feeling joyful, and do you feel alignment in whatever you're doing at this moment?
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. Bethany, tell the listeners where they can find your awesomeness.
So I am all over these internet streets. So you can find me at Crackers in Soup, CRACKERSINSOUP.com. Or you can find me on Instagram at Crackers and Soup. You can find me on LinkedIn under Bethany Hawkins. None of my handles are the same. This is before I had my ride or die Cheryline, and she's like, "What are all these different handles?" Look, mind your business. It's what I knew how to do at the beginning. But if you type in Bethany Hawkins, or if you type in Crackers and Soup, whatever doesn't have to do with food is us.
Yes, yes. And I'm going to task the listeners to do this. When you contact Bethany, make sure you ask her where Crackers and Soup came from.
Yes.
All right? That's your homework. I won't tell you. You've got to ask her. Oh, Bethany, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Every time, anytime I get to see your beautiful, beautiful face, it's going to be the best day ever.
Oh, thank you. All right, y'all. This was such a fantastic episode. I absolutely loved it. And I think some of the questions that we asked today are ones that we really need to tap in and ask on a regular basis. In fact, in my business, every quarter, I'm really looking at, okay, from what I planned out for the year and what I planned out for this quarter, does it feel aligned? Am I serving my people or my community with joy? Is there something that's pulling on me that's not allowing me to be able to live and breathe my legacy today? So I think the question that Bethany proposed is exactly the one that I want you to think about. And then when you're ready to really look at leveraging podcasting, when you want to get the assistance that you need in order to amplify your voice through podcasting, if this is something that brings you joy, then I'm going to highly recommend that you contact Crackers and Soup and Bethany. Their work is exceptional, and everyone that we bring into our community are people that are legacy driven. They're also like-hearted, and they also serve with integrity. And that's exactly what Crackers and Soup represents. And for any of you that are interested in finding out more about speaking, right? Make sure you reach out to Legacy Scalar. Until then, if you found any gems in this episode, please share, leave us a review. It allows us to stop being the best kept secret and allows people to find the incredible people that we have the opportunity to interview, but also to learn more about speaking and training within their business. All right, y'all. I'll catch y'all next time. Bye for now.